The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the old brick buildings of Oakland, wrapping everything in a warm yet tranquil ambience. Dylan, a 12-year-old boy with fragile legs and a familiar wheelchair, was making his way to a small basketball court. It was the same court his father once told him about, a place where Steph Curry, the basketball superstar, occasionally practiced in private, away from the gaze of the crowd. Today, Dylan didn't have any special plans. He simply wanted to escape the loneliness of his cramped, suffocating apartment. The old basketball resting on his lap was like a trusted companion. For Dylan, basketball wasn't just a sport, it was a world where he felt the most alive. As Dylan rolled closer to the court, he suddenly heard the rhythmic sound of a basketball bouncing, echoing through the quiet space. His heart began to race. Peeking through a gap in the fence, Dylan caught sight of a familiar figure. It was Steph Curry. He was practicing three-pointers, all alone on the court. No crowd, no cameras, just Steph and the ball. Dylan's jaw dropped, and his eyes widened in astonishment. He had never imagined he'd see his idol this close. But what caught Dylan's attention wasn't Steph's perfect shots, it was the moments when he missed. Steph picked up the ball after each missed shot, sighed, but never showed any sign of giving up. He adjusted his posture, focused, and shot again. Those moments made Dylan realize that even a superstar had to face challenges. Unable to contain himself, Dylan rolled his wheelchair closer to the fence and called out, "Steph Curry." Steph turned around, surprised to see a young boy in a wheelchair, his eyes gleaming as if he had just witnessed a miracle. Steph walked over, placed the ball down, and knelt to meet Dylan at eye level. "Hey kid, what are you doing here?" Dylan, flustered and trembling, stammered. I just wanted to watch you practice. I love basketball, but I'm not like everyone else. My legs aren't strong, and I don't think I can play." Steph gazed at Dylan, his eyes soft but penetrating. After a brief pause, he smiled and sat on the ground opposite Dylan. "I used to think I wasn't good enough to. When I was younger, I was smaller than all the other kids, and people told me I'd never make it in basketball. But do you know what I did?" Dylan shook his head. Steph picked up the ball, spinning it in his hands as he spoke. "I kept trying. Over and over again. I failed many times, but I never stopped. And I think you can do the same. Want to give it a try?" Dylan was stunned. He couldn't believe his idol was offering him this opportunity. "But I can't." Steph placed a reassuring hand on Dylan's shoulder, his gaze unwavering. "We don't say can't on this court. Come on, I'll help you." From that day on, Steph Curry decided to dedicate time to training Dylan. They met at the court every late afternoon as the sun faded behind the buildings. Despite his difficulties with movement, Dylan persevered. At first, he practiced holding the ball, then worked on turning and shooting. His initial shots lacked power, often falling short and bouncing weakly on the ground. Frustrated, Dylan sometimes wanted to quit. "I can't do it. My legs aren't like yours. I don't have the strength," he shouted in anger during one particularly tough session. Steph sat down beside him, speaking gently. "Dylan, strength doesn't just come from your legs. It comes from your heart and determination. You don't need to be like me or anyone else. You just need to be the best version of yourself." Those words etched themselves into Dylan's mind. He began to embrace failure as part of the journey. Day by day, his shots improved. He learned to use his arms to compensate for his weak legs, and he trained his eyes and his heart to focus on the target. Each small victory on the court was a step closer to his dream, and with Steph's unwavering support, Dylan discovered a strength within himself he never knew he had. The role reversal, Dylan and the lesson for Steph Curry. The days Dylan and Steph spent practicing together didn't just change the boy's life, they also made Steph Curry reflect on himself. Initially, Steph thought he was merely helping a disabled boy, a simple act of kindness. But over time, with each shot and every drop of sweat Dylan shed, Steph felt something strange stir within him, a reawakening he hadn't expected. One afternoon, after they had just finished a practice session, Dylan was gasping for air, his face glowing with exhilaration. Steph, sitting beside him, watched the boy slowly wipe the sweat from his brow, admiration shining in his eyes. "Dylan," Steph began, breaking the silence, "do you know why I keep coming back here to train with you?" Dylan looked up, his face puzzled. "Why, Steph? I thought it was because I needed your help." Steph shook his head, a thoughtful smile spreading across his face. "It's not just that, my little brother. Spending time here with you has reminded me of something very important. When I first started playing basketball, I loved it not for the trophies, the money, or the fame. I loved it for the pure joy of watching the ball sail through the air, for the sense of freedom I felt every time I stepped onto the court. But over the years, the pressure to win and everyone's expectations made me forget that." Steph leaned forward, looking deeply into Dylan's eyes, and continued, "You've made me remember why I started. You don't play basketball to prove something to the world, you play it because of your genuine passion. Every time I see you push yourself, I see a reflection of my younger self, and that inspires me more than you can ever imagine." Dylan froze, his wide eyes fixed on Steph. He couldn't believe that he, a boy in a wheelchair, could impact Steph Curry, the greatest idol of his life. He stammered, "But I'm just a disabled kid in a wheelchair. How could I possibly do that?" Steph smiled warmly, his gaze filled with sincerity and determination. "That's exactly why you're so special, Dylan. You don't let any limits hold you back from chasing your dreams. I've met so many incredible athletes, but very few have the spirit you do. You've taught me that winning isn't everything, it's the journey and the effort that truly matter." Dylan bowed his head, a wave of emotion swelling in his chest. He didn't know what to say, but he felt his heart grow a little bigger with each passing moment. Time passed quickly. 1 year later, Dylan, now a strong, confident and resilient boy, stood on the court at the city's wheelchair basketball championship. His team had overcome numerous opponents to reach the final, and now all hopes rested on Dylan in a moment of decision. The entire crowd fell silent. Dylan held the ball tightly, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. His heart raced not out of fear, but because he felt the energy of every practice session, every word of encouragement from Steph, and the fierce belief that he had given his all. As Dylan released the ball, it soared into the air, spinning as if it carried all his dreams, every drop of sweat, and the words Steph had once said to him, "Strength doesn't come from your legs, it comes from your heart." The ball went straight through the hoop. The crowd erupted into cheers. For a moment, Dylan stood frozen in disbelief before the rush of victory swept over him, bringing the brightest smile of his life to his face. In the front row, Steph Curry jumped to his feet, shouting like a proud teacher and a friend who had seen his own dream reignited in Dylan's journey. Steph walked onto the stage, handed Dylan a special trophy, and said with deep emotion, "You didn't just win today, Dylan. You conquered yourself, and that means more than any trophy." The story of Dylan and Steph quickly spread across Oakland, becoming a source of inspiration for everyone. Dylan had proven that there are no limits to dreams if we dare to face our fears and believe in ourselves. But Dylan wasn't the only one who changed. Steph himself rediscovered his purest love for basketball, a love that the spotlight and the pressure to win had once overshadowed. From that day on, every time Steph stepped up to the three-point line in an NBA game, he didn't just think about his team or the cheering fans. He thought of the boy in the wheelchair on that small court, Dylan, with his unyielding spirit and eyes shining with hope. Dylan had reminded Steph that basketball, like life, isn't just about winning or fame. It's about how we overcome our limits and find strength in the smallest, seemingly insignificant things. Dylan transformed his own life, and in doing so, he changed the heart of a superstar like Steph Curry. Limits, whatever they may be, can always be broken if we dare to believe we can.